along with timely feedback for your students. Another tip for success would be to use the technology to your advantage in meaningful ways. So a lot of the time, we as teachers are guilty of using technology, and we may not be using it for its best practice, but if you're using technology in an authentic or for a purpose, then it actually will benefit us in the long run. For example, for me, I love implementing technology for the differentiation aspect for each of my students. Freckle would be a great example of this because it is a self-paced program that I can use for the kids' math, for their reading, for social studies, and for science. It allows me to track their progress as well as it allows them to see when they continue to grow in different areas in all of those subjects. Another thing that I would stress is to monitor that data. So if you are using technology, that it is important to monitor the students' data to see if they are growing, how they're growing, and how quickly they're growing. It's also great to reflect upon that growth with the students so that they can see that, yes, they are making progress, they are learning, and that this type of learning environment is actually being beneficial to their learning. Um, and so overall, the blended learning model, my tip would be to use the best of both worlds. The traditional face-to-face teaching when the children are in the classroom, but as well as embracing the digital instruction aspect of it as well. And so these are just a few tips that I would recommend when it comes to trying to implement the blended learning model. As I shared earlier, if you are still a little confused or you would like more information about the blended learning model, I really would recommend visiting that blended learning website, and so that you can start taking steps to learning how to implement one of these models into your classroom or your practices as an instructor. So some resources that you might want to consider looking at would be Google Classroom. It's a really easy way to send out assignments, to send out resources to students, everybody in your classroom, and as well as Google is a great platform so that it's able to be accessed anywhere through many different devices. And so if students don't have a computer but they have a tablet, it is still something that they are capable of accessing on there. As I mentioned throughout this presentation, Freckle and Zern are some of my favorites that I use in my classroom. They're really good when it comes to math. Freckle, like I mentioned before, is good for social studies, science, and reading as well. Schoology works very similar to Google Classroom as well as Edmodo, where you're able to assign, you're able to send grades, you're able to send feedback. It's a great way to manage a lot of students if you have many students in your classroom or you are managing multiple students. I think another great resource would be Prodigy. Prodigy is something where the students can also practice their math. It also is individualized to their pace, so if students are really struggling on those early math concepts, it really differentiates for them and gets the kids involved. And Prodigy is actually a game that helps the students review their math facts as well as their fluency. And so I found it as a very effective way to keep students engaged, particularly. And the students I noticed were wanting to use this resource even in their free time. So I would really recommend them to do it at home. And if they wanted to continue playing at home, it was a great way for them to get online and interact with people who were also on Prodigy, even fellow classmates, as well as people who weren't even in their school or were in completely different parts of the world. So I thought that was a great way for kids to interact. Another resource that I have been seeing and have been using a little bit more this year is Discovery Education. I thought this was a great resource for science in particular because these students were able to translate the reading to English from English to Spanish. I do have fifth grade dual language, and so that was a really powerful tool for my students to use, especially those who felt a little bit stronger in Spanish or in English. I thought it was a great way to differentiate for them, as well as it allowed them to do use interactive tools with their reading, such as the highlighting tool, a translating tool. They were able to look up words like an online dictionary. So I thought Discovery Education would be a great resource to implement, or something that you should look at as well. Maybe you can implement it in your classroom as well. Overall, I hope you guys learned a little something about blended learning, the different methods, the different types of blended learning that are offered, as well as I hope that you guys consider using blended learning in your classroom as well. Thank you very much for listening.